Okay, so we are live. Hello, Assalamu alaikum everyone. I will wait for a few members to join in. So I can jump right into the session. Okay, so keeping the traumatizing KESC fluctuation and internet issues. I fingers crossed that session will go smoothly. But I know I think the load shedding is terrible all over Karachi, and it's very annoying. And so let's be positive about that. And how is everyone? How is everybody feeling? I'm in a very how do I say, very energetic mood because I had a beautiful cup of tea. I don't know how much of you get that, because when I am a person, if I get myself blood tested, I will get a content of caffeine in my test report as well. I'm so addicted to tea and coffee. So I am very happy because of that cup of tea. I don't know how many of you feel that way to the same way or not, but I do. I completely adore tea. Anyways, so a very awaited session. As a parent, I was really looking forward to meet Areej, talk to her, because when I got to know about her and her work, I was so fascinated, and I was so immediately clicked to the part where in her profile said that how sand play and art play therapy helps in emotional well-being, and I was so interested in it because as a parent, what I want to know is that how can I improve my child's well-being, emotional, and how and any kind of a activity that is very like a very not like a work activity. Children can get do that activity like a play activity and still have some benefit, emotional and mental benefit out of it. I think that's the best part. So without further ado, let me first invite add a reach to the screen. She'll give her introduction and then we'll start with the questions. Hello Areej, assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum Assalam. Thank you for having me here.
I was so waiting for your session because the questions that we discussed, I was really looking forward to that. So Areej, before we start the session, can you give a little introduction to the members?
Yeah. Um, so I am a child and adolescent psychologist. I have an MSc in developmental psychology and clinical practice. And I have training in play therapy and Sandplay Therapy. So I work with a lot of my work is with younger kids. So I work with kids from the age of 3 all the way up to 18. But I mostly take on younger kids from 4 up till 10, 12 is usually who I work with. I do take adolescents as well, but not that many. I like working with the younger lot. I think there aren't a lot of people who still like there are a lot of people who are working with adolescents, but not a lot with younger population. Um, so that's kind of what I do. I have my own private clinic where I see children, adolescents, and their families. It's called Lumas Counseling, and I work at a private school in Karachi. Where I'm the emotional well-being team leader there, so I head their mental health. I actually helped co-found the mental health and emotional well-being department there, and I um, kind of head the department and I'm developing programs on how to not just intervene when kids are having difficulties, but also how to prevent mental health difficulties from arising in the first place. So, yeah, that's kind of a little bit about who I am and the kind of work that I do.
Great. So, Reej, starting with the session, the first thing that I wanted to ask that what can be a traumatizing and a stressful event for a child?
Mhm. So traumatic or a trauma is anything that causes that is a threat to someone's, be it an adult or a child, to their worldview, to their bodily integrity, or to their life. A trauma could be a specific single event. So let's take, for example, an accident or an incident of sexual abuse or an incident of physical abuse. That one single event can be traumatic for a person, for a child. It could also be a series of events that could be traumatic to the child. So, if we talk about children who are living in a situation of abuse at home, who are being consistently abused. So it's something called toxic stress, when a person is in a state of stress all the time, which can also be traumatic. So again, for what may be traumatic for one person or one child may not be traumatic for another person, another child. So the perception of the incident would also definitely impact on whether or not that specific event is traumatic for a person. Um, and yeah, I think for a lot of people, some people say, "Oh, this isn't such a big deal," but for that one person, that might be a very big deal. And another thing to keep in mind is that it's not just a direct threat to the person's worldview or to their bodily integrity or to their life, but it's also witnessing an event happening to another person. So something that we call vicarious trauma or secondary trauma as well, when you're witnessing another person being traumatized or going through an event of trauma over and over again. So if we talk about so secondary trauma is when we hear, I'm sorry, I'll just clarify there. Being a witness to trauma is trauma in itself, but also hearing about trauma, so can be secondary trauma. So for example, therapists can go through secondary trauma or vicarious trauma by hearing incidents of their clients of trauma over and over again. So there's different kind of things that can be traumatic to people and to children.
Okay.
If that
And
makes
I
sense.
think, and yes, and I think for children, I remember one of my members as child started showing panic attacks just because her teacher changed. So,
Mm-hmm.
just a small events can be traumatizing and triggering for children. We just need to know. So, connecting to that, Areej, what can be the normal response of children specifically under stressful events?
So, Tuba, I'll just clarify a little bit.
and
So,
and we might not uh, yeah,
sorry, I think there's a little bit of a lag.
go ahead.
So I'll clarify a little bit. I think it's important to also differentiate between what is stressful or what might be a trigger for a mental health difficulty as opposed to what's traumatic. So trauma
Okay.
is something significant that causes a threat to a child's worldview or to their beliefs or to their life.
Mm,
And there's something that's stressful, which may not in itself be traumatic, but may be
mm,
stressful and may be a great cause of distress. So just a slight
yeah.
difference, and the way it'll manifest is going to be different as well, because the intensity of a trauma may be quite severe, and the impact of a stressful incident might not be as severe, but might still be distressing.
Mm,
Um, so, in terms of what is a normal response for a child when they're going through a stressful situation, there's different kind of signs and symptoms that we can look out for, and each child will react differently to it. But usually for younger children, it's common for them to regress. So let's say a 6, 7 year old, if they're going through a very stressful event or they're going through a traumatic event, they might regress back to being really babyish, or they might go back to acting in very babyish ways, or they might start wetting themselves or soiling themselves. They might become more clingy towards their parents. For other signs and symptoms to look out for, there are kids who might get really irritable or who might get really angry.
yeah, yeah.
Can you hear me? I think you
Yes,
were
yes, yes,
for a little bit. Okay. So if you
yes.
can't hear me, just let me know and I'll stop and try to figure out what's going on. Because sometimes I think you go off.
It's just my internet. Your net is fine. I think, and if there will be a glitch, I think someone will mention that. So please go on.
Perfect. All right. So there can be other signs and symptoms to look out for as well. For example, like you said, some kids might start to have anxiety. They might start to have panic attacks. I already mentioned wetting and soiling. They might have nightmares. They might have trouble sleeping. They might have trouble eating. So they might be eating a lot, or they might lose their appetite entirely. They might be sleeping a lot, or they might entirely lose, sleep. They might wake up in the middle of the night. They might want to start sleeping in their kids, in their parents' bed. So the issue is that a lot of the signs and symptoms of mental health difficulties overlap um, in terms of the trigger. So the way the child will start to behave and react to a stress will really depend on the kind of personality they have, the kind of social support they have, the kind of coping skills they have. So it's really kind of dependent on person to person and child to child, but those are kind of some common things to look out for.
Okay. And what can be psychological impact of violence on children and adolescents?
Okay, so that's a really, really important question. And what is violence, right? And violence can be physical violence, it can be verbal violence, so something that we call emotional abuse, and just kind of witnessing violence can be quite stressful and traumatic to a child, or being the target of violence can be traumatic to a child. And what we talk about, verbal violence, we talk about, teasing, sarcastic
Hmm.
remarks, at the expense of the child, at the expense of a caregiver, or at the expense of, a sibling, for example, in situations of emotional abuse, constant taunting. So that can be a form of violence as well, using hurling abuses at the child or a child's caregiver, for example. And the psychological impact of that can be quite great. It can be very negative. And these are children who may end up kind of learning those things as well. So there's two different types of things that might happen. They might end up learning the violence, and they might end up learning the aggression. So you might see that the child who is witnessing violence, or who is the target of violence, may go on to recreate or reenact a lot of that, what is happening or what they're witnessing in other situations as well. Or the impact of it might be that they might learn that this is a way to get things done. So, for example, if a child is being punished through a violence, so harsh, um, it's a way for a child to do something, to kind of uh, do what the parent is requesting, then the child will learn, okay, this is a way for me to get what I want. So they can start reenacting those patterns of violence as well. And there are other psychological impacts or psychological symptoms, for example, increased anxiety, you can be hypervigilant, because the child becomes really nervous and jittery. If there's a lot of violence happening at home, they might become very hypervigilant in the classroom, for example, and they may not be able to learn. So then you might see a sudden drop in their academic ability, their grades. They might not want to interact with peers. So, a lot of different things might end up happening just by that small amount of violence, which we don't necessarily may think is very significant for a child, but it can again be very, very threatening to them. And I do want to point out here, since we're on the topic of violence, I think in Pakistani society, um, harsh disciplining is still utilized. 'Cause there are kids who are still being punished in physical ways, and what we're told is, oh, it's okay. हम भी हम भी बच्चे थे, हमारे साथ भी ये होता था.
भी
And
हुआ है हाँ हाँ बिल्कुल
yeah, turned out fine. But actually, you don't know that you turned out fine. The fact that you're actually justifying the violence or the physical discipline should tell you that you're probably justifying what happened to you, which is not healthy at all. And there's lots and lots of
yeah
research out there that's saying that harsh discipline actually leads to a a damage of the parent-child relationship. And if we talk about traumatic events, the most significant, the worst kind of trauma that a child can go through is at the hands of their parents, at the hands of their caregiver. And that can be very debilitating and devastating for the child and can have really negative outcomes. So, trauma at the hand of the
Yeah.
parent and the hand of the caregiver, even though that's not the that might not be the intention of the caregiver, can be really devastating for the child. Does that answer your question, Tuba?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that sometimes the parents feel that if they are being strict and they are physically punishing their child, but on the other hand, they are providing the emotional support when needed. They are giving, so they feel that balancing it is going to be okay.
Hmm. That's actually a really, really good point. And research shows when there's kind of this hot and cold behavior or this extreme of being really nice, being really emotionally supportive and all of that, but also using really harsh discipline can be really debilitating to the child and can end up something that's called attachment, and the attachment to the caregiver, if that gets damaged, and it can get really, really damaged when there's ambivalence in the caregiving role and in the relationship. So let's say a child who's getting lots of harsh discipline from their parent, but also at the same time they're getting a lot of kind of emotional support from them. It can create this kind of um, unpredictability, right? There's the child doesn't know what end of their parent they're going to receive today. Are they going to be a supportive parent in this day on this day, or are they going to be a harsh parent on this day? And that that lack of predictability can be really, really can really
Mm,
negatively impact a child. And the attachment
true.
relationship between the caregiver and the child
Absolutely.
actually goes on to predict the kind of
Yeah.
attachment relationships they're going to have with their peers and their teachers and their partners when they become adults. And the relationship between a parent and a child is so important because it's the foundation of what the child's life is going to be later on. So I don't mean to scare parents, but just something to think about.
Absolutely. And yes, this is where the parents need to know that balancing जो I think ये सिर्फ parents की नहीं है. I think as in our culture being हम लोग कहते हैं ना कि सदका और गुनाह बैलेंस कर लो तो जन्नत मिल जाएगी, वो वाली सोच है हम जो हम हर जगह फिट करने की कोशिश
Yeah,
करते हैं.
I mean, not to say
So
that
anyways, jumping to the next question. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. There's a slight lag. I just want to say here that I'm not saying that you shouldn't give consequences to your children. You should, and that's healthy. They should learn
Yes.
discipline. They should learn consequences, but they're healthy consequences and positive behavior management strategies.
Yeah, there's this.
To,
Yeah, yes.
yeah, as opposed to like harsh discipline. So just wanted to put that out there.
Yes.
Tuba, can you hear me?
Hello?
Tuba, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, 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 yes. So
Okay.
sorry. Yeah.
No,
So you have you finished your sentence?
yeah, I'm done.
Okay. So you have mentioned a little bit about what are the signs that children show, but when parents should get worried and what are the things that they should look for, and when what's the alarming signs?
Yeah. So I've already kind of talked a little bit about the signs. I'll see a little bit more. So I've already talked about disturbances in sleep patterns and eating patterns and um, some other things to look out for. A traumatized child may have a sudden dip in academic ability, academic achievement, a sudden dip in grades.
Hmm.
They might want to, they might withdraw from things that brought them joy before. They might not want to hang out with friends. They might be shut in their room all the time. They
Yeah.
might be really irritable. With young kids specifically, it's really hard for them to say what's going on, the feelings that they're having. So they might have a lot of physical symptoms like tummy aches or headaches or nausea or panic attacks, and it's good to kind of do a screening for medical issues, but especially if there's no underlying medical condition, then there might be a sign for you that something more psychological might be going on. Some other things to look out for are they getting really inattentive in class, because when you're really hyper vigilant or when you're really distressed, you're thinking about the traumatic event all the time, or you're triggered, you might not be able to pay attention in class. You might have
Yeah.
impulsivity.
Yeah.
Um, and when should caregivers start to worry
And
that
I
you
think even in schools, teachers are trained to see if there's this sudden drop in any child's academic performances, is there this sudden drop in the concentration, focus in the child. So there must be something going on. So something if the child is showing out of the normal,
Mhm.
then that can
Absolutely.
be a sign.
Absolutely. And if there are mood swings, for example, if a child suddenly, and not just mood swings, but a child suddenly, if you have a
Yeah.
child who's really
Sorry.
happy all the time, but suddenly there's a shift in their personality or a shift in their mood. So instead of being a really
Hmm.
happy-go-lucky child, they suddenly become really withdrawn, or suddenly become really angry, or suddenly become really irritable. That may be a sign for you to check with them that there's something going on. And when you talk about,
Yeah.
when is the time for parents to start getting concerned, and I think that's a really important point, because all kids will at some point go through some of these changes and some of these phases. And the important thing to keep in mind is that if one or two of this is happening once in a while, that's fine. But a lot of these things, signs and symptoms appearing out of the blue, a lot of them at the same time, or lasting for a long period of time. So let's say for more than 3 or 4 weeks, and that's consistently there, present all the time. It's impacting their learning.
Hmm.
It's impacting their ability to carry out day-to-day functions. If it's impacting their ability to learn, to have fun, to live their life, and it's interfering with the caregiver's life as well, then that might be the time to kind of start worrying about it, and kind of do some investigation about what might be going on for that child.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so there's this. I think one question that I was really looking forward to, as you mentioned, that there's this secondary stress. I think you said that by observing someone else or listening to someone else, they get under stress. So, for instance, seeing or watching traumatic news on television. Like, for instance, if a child saw Hello? I didn't even know that I was gone.
Yeah, you disappeared for like about half a minute, I think.
Okay, okay. So I was saying something. Did you guys were you able to hear that?
I heard the part about secondary, hearing, you know,
Yeah. For instance,
like,
I in the beginning of the session you mentioned that if we hear someone else's trauma or their stress, we go under stress. So, for instance, children watching news. Recently, PIA plane crashed, and it was such a traumatizing news. If a child is watching it and suddenly they don't want to, for instance, they say that I will never go into a plane, I don't want to leave the house. How parents should help the child to cope with those circumstances if a child is under
um,
stress?
first of all, it's really important kind of news that we're hearing in front of or listening to in front of our children, and actually listening to ourselves. So I think with the whole pandemic situation going on, where I don't know about other people, but I was constantly checking the dashboard and I was constantly checking the news for coronavirus updates and all of that. So the intake that we take of news can be very distressing and cause a lot of stress for us and can be bad for our mental health. So not just being mindful about the kind of news we're doing, but also what are we doing in front of our children? Are we watching the news that's not appropriate to watch in front of them? So our news channels are very ruthless in terms of the images that they show. So it's definitely not a good idea to
Yeah,
watch this
yeah.
in front of, right? Like there was so many videos and photos of people who had passed away or who had
Mm-hmm.
got injured in the crash, and just the
Yeah,
image of the wreckage of the crash and all of that. So it's very important to first of all, if you kind of see that there's an incident that's happened, the first thing that you need to do is be mindful about the consumption of news in front of them. And
yeah,
other thing is that you listen to them, you hear them out. If they have concerns, if they have worries, you listen to them with empathy. You let them express their feelings. You let them express their worries. Sometimes it's helpful for them to write those worries down. Sometimes it's helpful for them to
yeah.
draw about the
Mm,
emotions that they're going through. And so those are all parts of providing some form of emotional aid, of emotional first aid. And the most important thing that children will want is reassurance that they're safe. Because news of a plane crash or news of something horrifying happening will first and foremost they'll be either worried about their own safety or worried about the safety of their caregivers or their loved ones. And what they're probably looking for is reassurance that they're going to be safe, that they're going to be okay. And as a caregiver,
yeah,
what you do is you need to hear them out, you need to give them the space to be able to express those worries and not dismiss them. So not say like, oh, kuch nahi hoga, nahi hota kuch bhi. Is tarike se nahi. You
mm,
need to be empathetic. You need to say, oh, you need to say things like, I can see that this has really upset you. What can I do to make you feel better? Or I can see that this has caused a lot of distress for you, or this is causing you a lot of worries. What might
yeah.
be helpful? What might cheer you
In this
up?
way, we are acknowledging their emotions also. We are not just subsiding
Exactly.
that, oh, you are feeling that you should not feel this way. This
Yeah.
is the last thing that the child needs to hear.
Exactly, because the child, all that they're looking for is reassurance that they're going to be safe. If you talk about the pandemic, for example, it's really
Yeah,
important for them, again, to know that they're safe, that you're doing everything you can in your power to keep themselves safe, to keep them and yourself safe, and your loved ones safe, and that you're doing all the necessary, taking all the necessary precautions. And then predictability creates safety. So having routines create that safety, having things to do with them creates that safety. The relationship you have with them creates that kind of space for them to be able to talk about what they're going through.
yeah,
And of
yeah,
course, if that continues to last beyond 3, 4, 5 weeks, and in terms of the pandemic, that will probably last until until we're out of this situation, and maybe a couple of months after that. But if that continues and lingers on beyond that, then it might be time to maybe get them some form of therapy or get them to talk to someone
yeah,
about it.
yeah. And I'm glad you said that. There's parents don't realize that they'll feel that okay in just a few days, or okay by doing this they'll feel better. And when they're not feeling better, they don't seek help. They don't ask professionals about it, which is wrong. And then that becomes something that they carry on forward, and then their their adulthood life is going to get affected as well. And
Absolutely.
you have mentioned a little bit, Areej, about this, but for instance, to cope with this COVID and pandemic situation, children are most very affected because they don't understand the concept well, and we can't just talk about this to them. Okay, what is this about? Why they can't leave? Because they are not comprehending it the way we do. But
Yeah.
they know that they can't go to school.
Hmm.
What they know is that they can't meet their friends. They can't go outside the park unless and until they follow some of the SOPs. But how to help cope with them other than talking to them and giving them awareness regarding corona?
Hmm. I think if you're creating a space for them, to be able to talk about their worries, to be able to express their worries, there are different art activities that you can do. You can tell them, let's draw together. I think because I'm a play therapist and I'm a big proponent of play, and a big proponent of, unstructured play, free play. So I think just having that relationship with your children, spending some time one on one with them, doing free unstructured play, getting in touch with your inner child, helping them, really embrace their childhood, and helping, and connecting with them, can go a really really long way, in helping them cope with this situation. And I think having that relationship, and again, it's about safety, right? As long as they're
Yeah,
feeling safe, and I'm not just talking about physical safety, but I'm talking about emotional safety. If they
emotional
feel
state.
safe, if they feel safe with you, if they know that you're there to kind of help them talk about things, or to help them, process their feelings, that you're going to play with them, and you're going to get down on their level, you're going to do art with them. And art also not as a way to kind of achieve a goal, or to do a massive art project, but just like, sitting there and doing some coloring, or doing like some free form art, or just doing some free form painting, that can be really
Mhm.
helpful in helping them cope with the situation. And again, there's different kind of things that you can do. Creating a structure and a routine that I talked about creates
Yeah.
predictability and safety for them as well.
And I love the what you said, that connecting to your inner child and then connecting to. I think this is what makes the parent-child relationship so strong. I think
Yeah.
I loved the way you said it. Okay, and Areej, how can school and families work together to help a child in their emotional well-being?
That's a very important question, and that doesn't happen often. I think, first of all, what needs to happen is that teachers and parents need to be on the same page. There's no us against them. There's us together and the child, and that's the kind of mindset that teachers and parents should be coming with. Parents are doing the best that they can, and teachers are doing the best they can, and both of them, I'm sure, have the child's best interest at heart. I think sharing of information is really, really important. So, what might be happening at school might impact their well being, what might be happening at home might impact their well being. Having a good relationship with the parent and the teacher, and the kind of, working collaboratively to share information, to come up with solutions. The
Mm,
teacher making an effort to have a good relationship with the child, building a rapport with the child. Again, the single most important factor in predicting a child's well-being is the relationship that they have with one adult. One adult can really change a child's life. So,
true.
having that really, really good connection with a child can go a long way in helping support, in helping to support their well-being. And then, just kind of also being aware of the signs and symptoms. The schools taking a lead in training their teachers in mental health and mental health issues, and how to look out for signs and symptoms, and what to do in the case of. And also, I think the responsibilities should also be on parents a little bit, because teachers want the best
Mhm.
for their children, but when they share concerns with parents, sometimes they can go on the defensive. They're like, oh no,
Yes.
this is wrong with my child. And a lot of teachers will come and report concerns to you out of the goodness of their heart, not because they're being malicious, not because they have it out against the child. All they want to do is, support the child. And if they're reporting concerns to you, don't take it as a way that the teacher is insulting your child or the teacher is insulting your parenting. And children will have mental health issues. It's absolutely fine. It's normal. It's going to happen. That is not to say that there's anything wrong with your parenting. That's not to say that there's anything wrong that you're doing, or it says anything about your the way you're raising your children. It's just a reality. Adults have mental health issues, and just like that, children have mental health issues. So, not being on the defensive and kind of working collaboratively will really work in helping the child.
Is that how to deal with the situation in which either parents get defensive or sometimes even teachers get defensive.
Mhm.
They feel like that if parents are asking the teachers, for instance, okay, the child is behaving differently at home. Is there something in the school that happened, or is there something in the class that happened? And sometimes teachers also get very defensive. And yes, sometimes parents also do get defensive.
Absolutely. I think, just being mindful that both the teacher and the parent have the best interest of the child at heart, and no one is blaming anyone. We're all just here to figure out what's really going with the mindset that, we're just going to do some investigation about what's going on and how we can help support the child in the best way possible. And I think if we can get into that mindset, it's going to be great for our children, because there will be instances where some children will be doing really well at home and might be really struggling at school, and that doesn't mean that the teacher is in the wrong. It might be that a child who maybe has a learning difficulty or has an anxiety issue may start to act out at school and has a significantly better time at home, or it may
Yeah.
be that something happening at home, and the child is acting out at home, and there has peers at school or has a good relationship with the teacher, so they're not having such a bad time at school. So there will be differences in the way that children will behave at home and school. That doesn't mean that anybody is personally responsible or to blame for. I mean, yes, there are things that parents and teachers do that can negatively impact on children's mental well-being, but generally the assumption is that everybody wants the best for the children.
Yeah. And you know what, Areej, the one of the sad part is that not just in mainstream school, even in inclusive schools, in with the therapist. Like my son is on spectrum, and sometimes when I do certain activities at home and he's able to master it, and I tell the therapist that he's able to do it, and sometimes he doesn't do it with them, they try to bash it out on me that आप तो कह रही थी कि इसको तो ये भी आता है, आप तो कह रही थी उसको तो ये भी आता है. I sometimes had to give them video evidences that see he is able to do it. Why would I, claim about something which he is not? So maybe he is feeling comfortable with me in that situation that he's able to do it, and with you he isn't.
Yeah, and
So therapists need to understand that. Yeah.
I think it goes both ways. But not to sound defensive or anything as a therapist, but I think there's kind of a an understanding or the perception that the therapists are magicians, or they're miracle workers and they'll just get everything done. So I think there's that kind of a little bit of anxiety with therapists too, that if I don't do something and the child is doing something at home, maybe the parent will come and say something bad to me, because it's happened where therapists are also bashed publicly. And I think as long as you're an ethical practitioner and as long as you're a supportive parent and you're working together, I think again the crux of it all is that you need to be on the same page, and I think the collaboration and the relationship between a therapist and parent really does impact on how well the child will end up doing in
Yeah.
therapy or at home.
True. And the thing is that even parents sometimes, if they are giving their child or getting the child therapy, they believe, okay, our work is done. They are going to do everything. They are going to cure my child, and then I don't have to put any effort in it. So I get what you say, that there's this pressure from, on the therapist as well. So yes, it's I think, as you said it with the start of the question, that it's not us against them. It's about working together for the benefit of the child.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And coming to the most exciting part, sand play. What I was looking for. That,
Yeah.
Areej, how sand play can help children in regulating their emotions.
Okay, so I'll first talk a little bit about play therapy, and then I'll go and talk
Yes.
about play therapy. So
Yes.
play therapy in itself is kind of like an umbrella term, and within play therapy, there's lots of different types and modalities of play therapy as well. So play therapy is kind of just uses a child, and actually play therapy also uses is being used with adults as well now. So play therapy uses a child's, natural means of communication. They can't really talk about their feelings and their emotions and all of that. They do it through play. They express themselves through play. So using the child's natural means of communication, it helps them process, regulate emotions, process trauma, work on coping skills, all of that. Now, within play therapy, there are directive approaches and there are non-directive approaches. And within the non-directive approach, there's sand play therapy. And sand play therapy should not be confused with sand tray therapy. So sand tray therapy is can be directive and non-directive, and sand play therapy, the Jungian sand play therapy, is an entirely non-directive method of working with children or with adults. So the idea is that there's like two sand trays. One is with dry sand, the other is with wet sand. You have a number of objects, miniatures, that represent different things, and the only instruction that's given to the child or to the adult is, this is, you have this much time, you can make whatever you want in the tray, and they can choose whether they want to, use this wet tray or they want to use the dry tray. Now the idea is that the healing through sand play, it's a completely non-verbal type of therapy. So you
Yeah.
don't tell the child you have to make this. So in sand tray, you might give the instruction to the child, oh, show me what your family looks like, and they'll use the different objects to make their family, to represent their family. In sand play, the instruction is you can do whatever you want, right? And the child or the adult then uses that as a way to kind of put on the tray their inner world and what's going on with them. So you don't ask them questions about, oh, who is this person or who is that person in the tray. You just allow the child or the adult to talk about the tray if they want to. If they don't want to talk about the tray, they don't have to. And the idea is that the healing takes place on an unconscious level, and it takes place on a more, you can also say, spiritual level. It takes place on a level that language can't really get to. And if you think about the brain as well, there's the part of the brain that's involved in that's involved in kind of like language, and there's a part of the brain that's involved in more visual kind of stuff. And a lot of the trauma, a lot of our early experiences are stored in the part of the brain that is involved in visual kind of processing. So a lot of our trauma is stored in the right side of the brain in images. So basically, the tray and the sand play helps you kind of process all of that in images where language can't really get to. So I'm not going to talk a lot about like the theory and all of that behind it, because then that gets a little too complicated. But basically, what you need to understand is that it happens on an unconscious level where language can't really reach. And if you're a sandplay therapist, you really need to believe in the process of what you're doing and the principles of the sandplay therapy, which is, loving kindness, non-judgmental, uh, you know, going in with the complete kind of learning from the client, and not putting your own kind of um, thoughts into it or all of that, and just kind of non-judgmentally accepting all of the clients. Um, yeah, so it's And in terms of how it kind of helps children regulate their emotions, I mean, the sand itself, such a connection to the primitive parts of ourselves, right? Because sand comes from earth. It's just getting in touch with that. It can be really grounding for clients, adults and children alike. So sometimes children and adults will come in and they'll just play with the sand, and that can really like kind of soothe the different parts of the brain that make us kind of jittery or nervous or like help us lose control of our emotions. It can have a really calming effect.
So, for instance, if I am coming to you for and you are applying sand play technique on me, so with every session you're going to do that, or is it like in some sessions they
It
do other
depends.
techniques and then some sessions they do other?
It depends. So I work with mostly children, and now I work very little with adults with Sandplay. So it depends on the kind of contract, in the sense of like what is it that you're looking for, what is the relationship you're looking for from the therapist. So with kids, I'll do a little bit of both, right? I'll let them use Sandplay if that's what they want. I'll also use other play therapy techniques. So in Sandplay, it'll be completely non-directive. So the child might take the entire session to do their sand tray, or they might take like 10 minutes to do their sand tray. And then if they do that, then I do like other forms of play therapy depending on the kind of goals of therapy. So if they're looking for specific coping skills, then I'll teach them those. If the idea is to help them process trauma, then I might just do like completely free, unstructured, non-directive play therapy. So it really depends. And for adults, now that I've started seeing adults, and I don't see adults for like traditional psychotherapy, so I only see them for Sandplay therapy. So I won't maybe see them every week. I might see them like once in a month or once in 2 weeks, and then we'll just do the tray. So it really depends on the kind of therapist you are, and the kind of client you are, and what you're looking to get out of it. Yeah.
Okay. So by the end of when they are done with their the tray, do they explain why did they made certain patterns or why did they use certain objects?
They do, and that's fine if they want to. We take the lead from the clients. If they want to talk about something specific, then they can. If they don't want to talk about it, that's fine too. Because the idea is that we're helping the client heal on an unconscious level where language can't really go. They might say things about why they use certain objects and what they made, but often what they might be saying is in what might be happening on an unconscious level. So it's
Level.
completely different level of healing that's taking place.
Okay. And there are just some questions. One is regarding play therapy, so I'll take that first. While talking about play therapy, can you recommend some low cost or no cost creative mind stimulating play techniques at home?
Can you recommend some low cost, no cost creative minds? Okay, so no cost, low cost play therapy technique, free unstructured play. I cannot emphasize this enough. Take a bunch of cardboard boxes, take a bunch of like art materials, take a bunch of blocks. See what your child does and take their lead, and they'll come up with amazing things that you can follow, and they're going to come up with amazing instances, stories, situations, and just take their lead. Other ideas are using paints, finger paints, or just normal paints, crayons, colors, just giving them like a poster paper and just letting them uh, draw whatever comes to mind. So my idea of like, so of course you can't do play therapy at home because a play therapist is trained in kind of looking at patterns, looking at things that the
Yeah.
child might be trying to express, all of that. So what you're doing at home is not going to be play therapy, but you are kind of helping them with kind of their development by playing with them, using some of the techniques that we use in play therapy. But you won't be doing play therapy with them. You'll just be using those techniques to help your child to build a connection with your child, or to help them develop a little bit more, if that
Okay.
makes
There's this another question.
okay.
Yes, and I think with the what color the child is using, or what the color is, for instance, child is using red to indicate what. I think that is also what important. Can you hear me, Areej?
Sorry, can you repeat that? I think I missed a
Hello.
little bit.
Can you hear
Yeah,
me, Areej?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Hello.
Tuba, I can hear you now.
Is it? Hello.
I can hear you. Can you hear me,
I
Tuba?
said that I think play therapists are also trained to see the color patterns the child is using, what kind of a color is using. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. So you were talking about the color patterns that children use. Yes, sometimes we can use the color patterns as well to see. I don't necessarily focus too much on the kind of colors the child is using unless they, say, oh, this color represents this. And there are some art therapy techniques which will talk about, you know, give an emotion a color and then see how the child uses that.
Hello?
Hi.
Am I? Yeah, sorry. So I was are also trained to see the color patterns that the child is using. For instance, what colors they are using for indicating what. Uh,
So,
is this?
So not necessarily. That's more like art therapy, maybe. I don't
Okay.
necessarily look at color patterns unless I use an art therapy technique where I tell to the child, okay, let's write down emotions and let's see what color you want to give that particular emotion, and then we'll do like an activity around that and see, uh,
Okay.
you know, see how much of that particular color the child is using. And so the different art therapy techniques that
Hmm.
using colors as well. Yeah. Tuba, I think there's a little bit of a lag.
Okay. There's this one question also.
Mm-hmm.
Hello.
Yeah, there you go. I lost you there for a minute
Yeah.
or something.
So there was this question. Yeah. This internet, anyways. Sorry. So yeah, the question. Sometimes a child withdraws and becomes really quiet due to any trauma, may it be physical or sexual. So what can parent do to help the child speak up?
Okay, so a child may not necessarily want to speak up. I think the most important thing is to make sure that the child knows you're a safe person. So having conversations with them about not necessarily the trauma, but having conversations around you're a safe person and that they can share whatever they want to with you. You can use play, maybe you can use art maybe to help them talk about their trauma. But if a child has been traumatized and you're not trained in talking about trauma as a parent, then I would suggest to seek therapy where the trained professional can help the child talk about the trauma, because sometimes if the child is pushed to talk about the trauma and relive the trauma, that can again be re-traumatizing for them. So we don't want to push them into talking about something that they're not yet ready to talk about. So the most important thing you as a parent or a caregiver can do is let them know that they can speak to you if they want to speak to you about it, and that you're a safe adult, and also that you will make sure that that person, that the child stays safe from the person who was the perpetrator of the trauma. So I think creating safety is the most important thing for you as a parent that you can do for a child that's
Yeah.
been traumatized.
Yeah, and I think that is right, that maybe by just discussing it, they are going to relive the trauma as well. So that can be again traumatizing for the child.
Absolutely.
Hello.
I can hear you. I can also see the comment and the question on top of the screen. So I'll answer the question if that's okay with you, Tuba.
Hello.
Hi.
Areej, just this is the last question, and then I'll wrap it up because the internet again, and I think we have taken all the questions. This is how to break the cycle of physical punishment, which is passed down generation to generation. As you
That's a
mentioned, that हमारे साथ भी तो हुआ था, हम देखो ठीक ठीक ही निकल आए.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really good question. And I think the answer to that is, I think if you're already aware that this is what's happening and that it's not okay, then you're on the right path. Recognizing that what happened to you was wrong and that it's not the correct way of disciplining your children is the first step. And then if you have been, kind of been traumatized because of what's happened to you, then seeking support and seeking help to process what happened to you so that you don't repeat the cycle
Yeah.
of trauma and of physical punishment. So seeking support yourself, and often what happens is that children will come to us for therapy, but the issue might not just be the child themselves, but the parents' own past experiences, which is leading to the way they're kind of parenting or the relationship with their child, which is causing the issues. So recognizing where you might need support and not being ashamed of it. There's no
Mm.
shame in having a history of being traumatized. We've all been raised in ways that maybe were not so healthy, and recognizing that some of that is playing into our parenting can be really helpful, and getting support for that
Yeah.
can be really helpful.
True, true. Thank you so much, Areej, for this wonderful and insightful session. I got to know new things about Sandplay Therapy that I didn't know, and thank you so much for that. And Areej, if someone wants to connect with you, how can they?
So I think you tagged my page on the post. So it's called Lumas Pakistan, Lumas Counseling Pakistan. You can message me on that, and then I can get back to you if you have any questions on that, or we can kind of
Yeah,
set up schedule a call to talk about what it might be that you might need support with.
I was saying that are you
I can't hear you, Tuba.
Hello.
Hi.
I was just saying that do you do online counseling as well, Areej?
I do. So right now, I'm not taking any more new clients for therapy, but I am offering parent guidance sessions. So if you're a parent who's struggling a little bit with, their child and would like to
Hmm.
have a conversation with me, or would like to have a session with me about how to kind of, address some of the concerns that you have, then I'm offering that. But I don't have space for any more new therapy clients. But I am taking on parent consultations and parent guidance sessions or parent
Okay.
coaching.
And other than this, because we are in this COVID situation, were you sitting somewhere and doing practice?
Yeah, so I work at my own clinic, which is on Nishat, and I practice out of there.
Okay, so I'll just take the details and I'll put it in the description just in case if someone wants to connect with you. And thank you so much, Areej, for this session and bearing this pathetic internet with me.
We all have issues with, how things are going.
Yeah, and recently it's just this electricity and internet is a big issue. So
So
thank you so much for coming to my page, and I was really looking forward to it, and you have really clarified so many things that I wanted to, and I'm quite sure members would have taken so much from this session as well.
thank you so much, and thank you for having me.
Thank you.
All right.
Hafiz.
Bye.
Bye.
Hafiz.
Okay, guys. So that was Areej, and if anybody wants to connect with her, as she mentioned, she has no more slots right now for any new therapy, but she is giving parent guided sessions. So please do connect with her. She's an excellent therapist. I'll put all the details in the description. And I'm sorry about the internet again. I think ये मेरा एक तकिया कलाम बन गया है. मेरे हर सेशन के शुरू में और बाद में मैं ये जरूर बोलती हूँ. तो आई नो ये सबके साथ हो रहा है मगर एनीवेज अब जब मैं सेशन खत्म कर रही हूँ तो नहीं हो रहा है वेरी गुड तो आप लोग जो देख सकें थैंक यू सो मच थैंक यू जैनब एंड आमना फॉर एक्सेलेंट क्वेश्चंस एंड thank you for joining. And if you didn't watch it, koi baat nahi, it will be on the page. I'll upload the YouTube link as well. Do ask questions if you watch it later. Areej, I will tag Areej and she will get back to you with it. Or if me or my panelist will be able to help you. So thank you so much for joining in. And tomorrow, stay tuned. I have me and my team, my panelists have really worked hard for something that we are going to launch and I'm really excited about it because I think past 2 months or 1.5 or 2 months me and my panelists are working so hard for this so because I think we feel that talking about any topic is very we are very responsible so we need to deliver not just good information, but in a good way also. I think that way needs to be done by more reading, by more research. So we have done a lot, and tomorrow I'll upload all the details because there's this one topic that we have dedicated coming, I think, 1 week or 10 days to that. And I hope that will be very helpful too. So stay tuned to that. Me and my panelists are really excited about it. So thank you so much for joining in. And those who couldn't, it's okay. Watch it later. Enjoy. Take care. Allah Hafiz.